Welcome back, everyone. We are jumping right into our ongoing explainer series today. We're looking at part 6 of a phenomenal 20-part tutorial called Guide to Modern Network Routing Protocols. This whole thing comes to us from Virtualization Options LLC. They're this really great Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory organization. So for Chapter 6, we're zooming in on one of the absolute granddaddies of routing protocols, the Routing Information Protocol, or RIP. But we aren't just giving you a textbook definition today, we're actually unpacking its entire evolutionary journey. We're going to compare RIP version 1, RIP version 2, and RIPng.
So right off the bat, here is the million-dollar question. There are 3 distinct versions of RIP floating around out there in the wild. Which one actually belongs in your modern network environment, and, well, which one is literally a security disaster just waiting to happen? We're going to take a quick journey through this protocol to figure out exactly how to deploy it safely and when you absolutely need to just walk away.
Section 1. 3 generations of RIP, an evolutionary timeline.
To really grasp where RIP sits today, we got to look at how it grew up. The protocol has shifted so much over the decades. Back in 1988, RIP version 1 hits the scene. It was strictly built for IPv4, and honestly, it operated in a super basic way. Fast forward a full decade to 1998, the networking world had totally exploded, right? So we needed RIP version 2. Still IPv4, but it brought in some desperately needed modernization. And then, as we all started running out of IPv4 addresses, we got RIPng. The NG stands for Next Generation. Documented in RFC 2080, this was the big leap to an IPv6-only standard.
Section 2. Comparing the RIP versions, updates, subnets, and security.
Okay, so the differences between these 3 generations, they aren't just, minor software patches. They literally dictate whether your network functions securely or falls completely apart. Just look at the routing type here. RIPv1 is fundamentally broken for modern networks because it's classful. That means subnet masks aren't even included in its updates. Every single subnet has to share the exact same mask. But RIPv2 and RIPng, they're classless. They fully support variable length subnet masking, or VLSM, and CIDR. RIPng even handles those massive 128-bit IPv6 prefixes. And check out the authentication. This is wild. RIPv1 has 0 authentication, none. RIPv2 stepped it up by introducing MD5 for trusted neighbors, and RIPng uses the rock-solid IPsec standards built right into IPv6.
Let's actually unpack that security piece for a second because it is absolutely crucial. RIPv1 operates using this frankly dangerous broadcast method. It blasts its updates out to 255.255.255.255. What does that mean for you? It means every single device on that network segment has to stop and process the update. And remember, 0 authentication. So literally anyone, some rogue device plugged into a wall jack can just inject false routes in your network. It's a total security nightmare. Now contrast that with RIPv2 and RIPng. They use targeted multicast. RIPv2 uses 224.0.0.9 and RIPng uses FFO2/9. So only actual RIP routers even bother looking at the updates, which saves so much overhead. Toss in that MD5 or IPsec authentication, and you guarantee that only trusted routers are allowed to mess with your routing decisions.
Section 3. The Golden Deployment Rule, the definitive verdict on RIP.
All right, this brings us to a really critical climax in our explainer today. Based on the research from Virtualization Options LLC, there is a hard, non-negotiable rule in IT when dealing with this stuff. Ready? Always use RIPv2 for IPv4 networks, use RIPng for IPv6. Never deploy RIPv1 in any new environment. I mean, they do not mince words here. RIPv1 is completely obsolete. No subnet mask support, no authentication. It's just an operational disaster. Seriously, never ever deploy it in a new network today.
Section 4. Why RIP still survives, the reality check.
So, that begs a super logical question, right? If RIP has versions that are totally obsolete and it's practically a dinosaur in tech years, why on earth do we still use it? Why hasn't the entire industry just dumped it for newer, flashier protocols? Well, despite its age, RIP actually holds its ground for a few really solid reasons. First off, it is universally supported. Whether you're unboxing a brand new router or blowing the dust off a legacy box from decades ago, RIP is going to work. It doesn't care about vendors or platforms. Plus, it has this incredibly low CPU and memory footprint. If you're working with resource-constrained devices that just can't handle the heavy database calculations of complex protocols like OSPF or BGP, RIP is your best friend. And for us IT folks, it's a breeze to troubleshoot. The routing table logic is straightforward and, actually human readable.
And this really hits the nail on the head. You might just be connecting a tiny cluster of devices, say a simple 3-router branch office. In that kind of environment, you really don't need a massive, complicated protocol mapping out a global topology. Simple networks genuinely benefit from simple protocols. For small deployments where simplicity completely outweighs raw speed, RIP's basic distance vector approach is actually a massive advantage.
Section 5. RIP's fatal limitations, where the protocol falls apart.
But okay, we got to look at the flip side here. Every IT pro has to know not just where a protocol shines, but where it completely faceplants. I want you to burn this number into your brain. 15. RIP has a hard, unyielding 15-hop ceiling. Since it measures distance purely by the number of routers a packet has to cross, a metric of 15 is the absolute max. If a destination is 16 hops away, RIP says, nope, totally unreachable. End of story. If your enterprise network spans more than 15 routers end-to-end, RIP literally cannot route your traffic.
And because it only cares about hop count, you run into this hilarious but honestly terrifying reality. Picture this. You've got two paths. One is a blazing fast, direct 10 gigabit per second fiber link. The other path, it forces traffic through 3 ancient 56K modem links. Well, RIP has absolutely zero awareness of bandwidth. It is completely blind to link speed. Because that fiber link might technically route through a few more hops in some topologies, RIP will look at those 356K modems and say, yep, that's the better path, just because the sheer hop count is lower. It will literally choke your network down to a crawl because it just doesn't know any better. Crazy, right? Finally, we have to talk about convergence. That's the time it takes for your network to realize a link failed and actually fix itself. And guys, RIP is painfully slow at this. It relies on these periodic 30-second updates, and it uses 180-second hold-down timers just to prevent routing loops. What that means is, worst-case scenario, convergence can take over 3 minutes. Think about that for a second. If a switch goes down in a modern hospital or a financial institution, waiting 3 full minutes for the network to reroute traffic, yeah, that is completely unacceptable today.
So what's our big takeaway from Chapter 6 of this Virtualization Options LLC guide? Look, RIPv2 and RIPng are fantastic, secure, and incredibly efficient tools if you're running a small, resource-constrained network. But you absolutely have to respect their limits. If your network is creeping past that 15-hop boundary, or if your business operations literally demand sub-second recovery times when a link fails, are you ready to leave RIP behind? It's a huge question every growing IT organization has to answer. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I hope this deep dive has empowered you to make the right routing decisions for your own network.